The frozen winds of Dracor 7 howled across the battlefield like the screams of the dying. Sergeant Marcus Chen lay half-buried in the crimson snow, his armor cracked and leaking precious heat into the hostile atmosphere. His helmet display flickered with static, showing critical failure warnings across every system. The last thing he remembered was the nuclear blast that had torn through the human forward base, vaporizing 3,000 Marines in an instant. He should have been among them. Blood pooled beneath his shattered leg, freezing almost as quickly as it left his body. Marcus tried to move, but pain shot through him like lightning. His rifle lay 10 meters away, buried under debris from a collapsed fortification. Not that it mattered. His hands were too numb to pull a trigger anyway. The cold was winning, and Marcus knew it. He had maybe an hour before hypothermia shut down his organs completely. The Vreks had won this battle. Their insectoid forces had overwhelmed the human colony defenses with brutal efficiency, using tactics the military analysts had said were impossible. They had adapted, evolved their strategies mid-battle like nothing humanity had ever encountered. Marcus had watched his entire platoon get cut down by plasma fire, their screams cutting through the comm channels before going silent one by one. He was the last, the forgotten one. Above him, the alien sky churned with purple and green auroras, beautiful and terrible. 3 moons hung like watching eyes, casting strange shadows across the devastation. Marcus closed his eyes, accepting his fate. At least the cold would make it painless soon. His thoughts drifted to Earth, to his sister Maria, who would receive the death notification, to the niece he would never meet. The military would list him as vaporized in the nuclear blast. Cleaner that way, no body to bury, no questions about why he survived when thousands died. Something scraped against metal nearby. Marcus's eyes snapped open, his combat instincts overriding the creeping darkness. His hand moved slowly toward the combat knife on his belt, the only weapon still within reach. If the Vreks had come to finish him off, he would take at least one with him. That was the Marine way. Never surrender. Never give up. The scraping came closer, accompanied by small chirping sounds. Not Vreks. They communicated through clicking mandibles and pheromone signals. This was something else. Marcus forced his head to turn, ice cracking on his neck seal. Through the swirling snow he saw movement. Small shapes, maybe half a meter tall, waddling through the debris field with curious bobbing heads. They looked like miniature dragons from ancient Earth legends. Scales glittered in shades of silver and blue, catching the aurora light. Small wings that seemed too delicate for flight folded against their backs. Long necks swayed as they investigated the ruined battlefield, tiny claws clicking on frozen metal. Their eyes glowed with an inner light, amber and intelligent. Marcus counted 5 of them moving in a cluster, keeping close to each other. One of the creatures noticed him. Its head tilted to the side, eyes widening. It chirped urgently to the others, who immediately gathered around the human. Marcus tried to move, tried to show he was dangerous, but his body refused to obey. The creatures came closer, unafraid. Up close, Marcus could see they were juveniles, their scales still soft and their movements clumsy. Hatchlings, he realized. Dragon hatchlings on an alien world. The first one reached out a tiny claw and touched his helmet gently. It chirped again, a sound almost like concern. Another hatchling pressed against his broken leg, and Marcus gasped at the sudden warmth. Heat radiated from the creature's body, far more than should be possible from something so small. It was like holding a furnace. The other hatchlings quickly surrounded him, pressing their warm bodies against his freezing armor. Marcus felt sensation returning to his fingers, painful but welcome. The hatchlings chirped to each other in what sounded like conversation, their glowing eyes examining his wounds with surprising focus. One of them tugged at his helmet seal, trying to open it. Marcus wanted to stop it, knowing the atmosphere would kill him in seconds, but he was too weak. The hatchling chirped in frustration and gave up, instead pressing its warm snout against the cracked faceplate. The largest of the hatchlings, its scales more silver than blue, made a deeper sound. The others responded immediately, organizing themselves around Marcus with clear purpose. 2 positioned themselves at his shoulders, 2 at his legs, and the silver one at his head. They began to glow, a soft light building beneath their scales. Heat intensified, flowing into Marcus's body like liquid fire. His suit's damaged systems flickered back to life, drawing power from the impossible thermal energy the creatures were generating. The medical readout showed his core temperature rising, blood flow improving, torn tissue beginning to stabilize. It should have been impossible. Nothing living could generate this much heat without burning itself. Yet the hatchlings seemed perfectly comfortable, their scales growing brighter as they worked. Marcus felt something else too. A presence in his mind, gentle and curious. Images flashed through his thoughts, not his own memories. He saw a massive cave system beneath the planet's surface, filled with crystalline formations that pulsed with light. He saw adult dragons, magnificent creatures the size of dropships tending to clutches of eggs. He saw the nuclear blast from a different angle, felt the fear and confusion of hatchlings separated from their parents in the chaos. These creatures had been displaced by the battle, driven to the surface by the destruction below. They were lost, scared, searching for their family, and they had found him instead, a dying enemy from the species that had brought war to their world. Yet they were saving him anyway. The thought brought unexpected tears to Marcus's eyes, freezing on his cheeks inside the helmet. The silver hatchling pressed its head against his faceplate, its amber eyes staring directly into his. Marcus felt a question in his mind, wordless but clear. Live? The hatchling was asking if he wanted to live. Marcus managed the smallest nod, using the last of his strength. The hatchling's eyes brightened, and it chirped with what sounded like determination. The glow from all 5 hatchlings intensified until Marcus had to close his eyes against the brilliance. Heat surged through his body, painful and healing at the same time. He felt bones shifting, wounds closing, frostbitten tissue regenerating in ways that violated every law of human medicine. The hatchlings were doing more than warming him. They were healing him, restructuring his damaged body with their impossible biology. When the light faded and Marcus opened his eyes again, he could move his fingers. The pain in his leg had reduced to a dull ache. His suit system showed green across the board, all critical functions restored. The hatchlings sagged around him, their glow dimmed, clearly exhausted from the effort. But they were chirping happily, pleased with their work. Marcus slowly sat up, his body responding with newfound strength. The hatchlings backed away slightly, watching him with curious eyes. The silver one chirped questioningly. Marcus looked at these impossible creatures who had saved his life for no reason other than they could. In this moment, surrounded by the ruins of human ambition and alien warfare, he made a decision that would change everything. Marcus froze in the corridor, his rifle lowering slightly as the crying sounds grew louder. The noise echoed off the organic walls, making it difficult to pinpoint the exact location. His squad moved past him, focused on their mission, but something kept Marcus rooted in place. "Chen, keep up," Ramirez hissed over the comm. He forced himself to move, following the others deeper into the facility. The corridor opened into a massive chamber, and what Marcus saw made his stomach turn. Rows upon rows of pods lined the walls, each one pulsing with bioluminescent light. Inside each pod, he could see shapes moving, growing, forming. "Jackpot," Hayes said grimly. "Plant the charges. 5-minute spread. Let's make sure this whole place comes down." The squad spread out, attaching explosive charges to the support structures. Marcus moved mechanically, placing his charges at the designated points, but his mind was elsewhere. The crying had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that felt wrong. He found himself at the far end of the chamber, near a corridor that branched off from the main room. His helmet sensors detected movement ahead. Not the massive heat signatures of adult Velkari, but something smaller, clustered together. 2 minutes, people, Hayes called out. "Finish up and move to extraction point." Marcus knew he should turn back, should rejoin his squad and leave this place before the charges detonated. But his feet carried him forward, down the dark corridor, toward whatever waited in the shadows. The corridor opened into a smaller chamber, and Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. They were Velkari, but not like any he had seen before. Dozens of them huddled together in groups, their bodies small and underdeveloped. They had the same basic shape as the warriors he had fought, but their chitinous armor was soft and pale, their movements uncertain and clumsy. Their multifaceted eyes, normally so cold and alien, were wide with fear. Hatchlings, Velkari children. They saw Marcus, and the crying started again, high-pitched and terrified. The largest of them, no bigger than a human 10-year-old, placed itself between Marcus and the others, raising its small claws in a defensive gesture that would have been threatening if it wasn't so clearly futile. Marcus raised his rifle, his finger finding the trigger. These were the enemy. These would grow up to be the monsters that killed his family. Every tactical manual said to eliminate enemy assets before they became threats. It was the smart move, the logical move. But as he looked at the small creature trying to protect the others, something broke inside him. It was protecting them. Just like he would have protected Tommy. "Chen, where are you?" Ramirez's voice crackled over the comm. "We're at 90 seconds. Marcus couldn't move. Couldn't think. The hatchlings huddled closer together, their small bodies trembling. One of them, smaller than the others, made a sound that reminded him too much of Tommy when he was scared during thunderstorms. "Damn it," Marcus whispered. He lowered his rifle and activated his comm. "Hayes, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "We're at 60 seconds. There are children here. Valkyrie children, dozens of them." The comm went silent for a moment. Then Hayes spoke, her voice hard. "They're enemy assets, Chen. Leave them." "They're kids," Marcus said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "They can't fight. Can't even run properly. That's an order, soldier. Get to the extraction point now." Marcus looked at the hatchlings. The largest one was still trying to protect the others, despite obviously being terrified. It reminded him of documentary footage he had seen of human children in war zones, trying to be brave when everything around them was falling apart. He made a decision that would probably cost him everything. "Negative," Marcus said, cutting the comm channel. He approached the hatchlings slowly, holding his hands out to show he meant no harm. They pressed back against the wall, their small claws scraping uselessly against the organic surface. The largest one chittered at him, a sound that might have been a warning or a plea. Marcus knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. He removed his helmet, letting them see his face. It was risky, but he needed them to understand he wasn't going to hurt them. "It's okay," he said softly, knowing they probably couldn't understand human speech, but hoping his tone would communicate something. "I'm not going to hurt you." The hatchlings stared at him with their multifaceted eyes. Up close, Marcus could see they were terrified, confused, alone. Whatever adults had been caring for them were probably the warriors his squad had killed outside. The smallest one took a tentative step forward, tilting its head in a gesture that looked almost curious. Marcus held perfectly still, letting it approach. It reached out with one small claw and touched his hand, the touch surprisingly gentle. "Yeah," Marcus whispered. "Just a scared kid, aren't you?" His helmet lying on the ground crackled with Hayes' voice. 30 seconds, Chen. The charges are going to blow." Marcus grabbed his helmet and ran back into the main chamber. His squad had already evacuated, but the explosive charges blinked red, counting down. 25 seconds. He could make it out, save himself, let the hatchlings die in the explosion. Instead, he ran to the nearest charge and ripped it off the support column, his hands working frantically to disarm it. 15 seconds. Another charge. 10 seconds. He couldn't get them all. 5 seconds. Marcus threw himself through the nearest doorway as the remaining charges detonated. The explosion was massive, tearing through the main chamber, collapsing support structures, bringing down tons of organic material. The shockwave threw Marcus against the wall, driving the air from his lungs. When the dust settled and his ears stopped ringing, Marcus pulled himself to his feet. The main chamber was destroyed, most of the breeding pods crushed or burned. But the corridor to the smaller chamber where the hatchlings were had survived. The explosion had sealed it off, but they were alive. He limped back to the small chamber. The hatchlings were huddled together, even more terrified than before, covered in dust but unharmed. They looked at him with their strange eyes, and Marcus saw something in them he never expected to see in a Valkyrie. Trust. "Well," he said to himself, "I'm definitely court-martialed now." His comm was full of angry voices demanding to know what happened, where he was, why he had disarmed the charges. Marcus ignored them all. He sat down against the wall, his body aching from the explosion, and looked at the alien children who were now his responsibility. The smallest one, the brave one who had touched his hand, approached him again. It made a soft chirping sound and settled down next to him, its small body pressed against his leg. Marcus thought about Sarah, who had believed in peaceful contact with aliens. He thought about Tommy, who had been fascinated by alien life. He thought about everything he had lost, everything he had hated, everything he had wanted to destroy. And he realized that maybe, just maybe, his family would have wanted him to save these children rather than kill them. "Okay," he said to the hatchlings. "We need to figure out how to get you out of here." The collapsed corridor blocked any easy escape route. Marcus surveyed the damage. his tactical training kicking in despite the absurdity of his situation. He was trapped underground on an alien moon with 24 Velkari hatchlings. His entire squad probably thought he was dead, and when they found out he was alive, they would arrest him for treason. Could be worse, he muttered, then paused. Actually, no. This is pretty much as bad as it gets. The hatchlings watched him with their strange eyes, their small bodies clustered together for comfort. Marcus counted 23 of them, ranging in size from barely larger than a house cat to about the size of a young teenager. The larger ones kept the smaller ones close, their underdeveloped claws gently touching and reassuring each other. It reminded Marcus painfully of human children after a disaster, seeking comfort from whatever source they could find. His helmet comm was still active, though the explosion had damaged the signal. He could hear fragments of conversation from his squad. They were arguing about whether to search for him or return to the transport. Commander Hayes was ordering them back, assuming Marcus had been killed in the explosion. Let them think that, Marcus decided, switching off the comm. He needed time to figure out what to do next. The chamber had one functioning light source, a bioluminescent growth on the ceiling that pulsed with soft blue light. It gave the room an underwater quality that made everything feel dreamlike and unreal. Marcus checked his supplies. 1 rifle with 3 magazines, 2 grenades, emergency rations for 3 days, medical kit, cutting torch. The cutting torch might be useful. He approached the collapsed corridor, studying the debris. The organic material of the facility walls had hardened when exposed to air, forming a tough barrier. But his cutting torch could slice through it given enough time. The problem was making an opening without bringing down more of the ceiling. A soft chittering sound made him turn. The smallest hatchling, the brave one, was standing a few feet away, watching him work. Up close, Marcus could see its features more clearly. The chitinous armor was pale blue with darker stripes, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the bioluminescent light like tiny galaxies. It had 4 arms, just like the adult Velkari warriors, but they hung awkwardly, as if it hadn't quite figured out how to coordinate them all yet. "You're curious, aren't you?" Marcus said quietly. "That's good. Curiosity means intelligence." The hatchling tilted its head, mimicking his earlier gesture. Then it chirped again and pointed one small claw at the collapsed corridor. "Yeah, that's the way out," Marcus agreed. "But it's going to take time." The hatchling made a series of clicks and whistles, then turned and called to the others. To Marcus's surprise, several of the larger hatchlings approached. They studied the collapsed corridor, then began carefully pulling away smaller pieces of debris, working together with surprising coordination. "Well, I'll be damned," Marcus breathed. "You understand the problem. They weren't just intelligent. They were actively trying to help him." Marcus joined them, using his cutting torch on the larger pieces while the hatchlings removed smaller chunks. They worked for hours, making slow but steady progress. The small brave one stayed close to Marcus, watching everything he did with apparent fascination. During a rest break, Marcus shared some of his emergency rations. He wasn't sure if the hatchlings could eat human food, but they seemed hungry. He broke a nutrition bar into pieces and offered them. The hatchlings sniffed cautiously, then began eating. They made pleased chirping sounds, clustering around Marcus for more. "Easy there," he laughed despite himself. "I've only got so much." The small one climbed into his lap, its movements still clumsy but determined. It looked up at him and made a soft trilling sound that somehow conveyed contentment. Without thinking, Marcus found himself gently stroking its head, the way he used to stroke Tommy's hair during bedtime stories. The similarity hit him like a physical blow. He pulled his hand back, his breath catching in his throat. What was he doing? These were Velkari, the same species that had killed his family. How could he be sitting here feeding them, protecting them, treating them like children who needed his care? "Because they are children who need your care," a voice in his head whispered. It sounded like Sarah. The hatchling in his lap sensed his distress. It reached up with one small claw and gently touched his face, making a questioning chirp. The gesture was so human, so full of concern, that Marcus felt something inside him crack. "I lost a son," he whispered to the alien child. "He was about your size. He loved learning about aliens, about creatures from other worlds. He would have loved meeting you." His voice broke. "But your people killed him. They killed him and his mother and 2,000 others." The hatchling didn't understand his words, but it seemed to understand his pain. It pressed closer, making soft, soothing sounds. The other hatchlings gathered around him, their small bodies forming a protective circle, as if trying to shield him from hurt. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself cry for the first time in 3 years. The tears came hard and painful, purging something toxic that had been festering inside him. The hatchlings stayed close, their presence somehow comforting rather than threatening. When the tears finally stopped, Marcus felt emptied but clearer than he had in years. He looked at the small faces surrounding him and saw them for what they truly were. Not monsters, not future enemies, just children, as innocent as Tommy had been, caught in a war they didn't start and didn't understand. "Okay," he said, wiping his eyes. "Let's get you out of here." They worked through the night, which on this moon lasted nearly 18 Earth hours. Marcus taught the hatchlings simple hand signals, and they proved remarkably quick at learning. Stop, go, careful, danger. Within a few hours, they were communicating with basic efficiency. The breakthrough came at hour 16. Marcus's cutting torch burned through the last major obstacle, revealing a narrow passage beyond. Cool air rushed through the opening, carrying the scent of the alien forest. "We're through," Marcus announced. The hatchlings chirped excitedly, pressing forward, but Marcus held up a hand in the stop signal he had taught them. They immediately froze, watching him attentively. "Listen carefully," he said, knowing they understood his tone, if not his words. "Out there is dangerous. There might be my people who will want to hurt you. There might be your people who will want to hurt me. We need to stay together and stay quiet. Understand?" The largest hatchling, who Marcus had mentally nicknamed Guardian, chirped softly and gathered the smaller ones close. They formed up in a tight group, the bigger ones protecting the smaller, moving with surprising discipline. Marcus squeezed through the opening first, his rifle ready. The passage led to a side tunnel he didn't recognize, one that must have been part of the facility's ventilation system. He motioned for the hatchlings to follow. They emerged into the alien forest as the red sun was rising, painting the purple vegetation in shades of crimson and gold. Marcus checked his tactical display. The human base was 5 miles north, but that was exactly where he couldn't go. He needed to find somewhere safe. Somewhere he could figure out what to do with 24 alien children who were depending on him to keep them alive. The small brave one took his hand with its claw, looking up at him with absolute trust. "Yeah," Marcus sighed. "No pressure or anything." The alien forest was beautiful in the morning light, but Marcus knew it was also deadly. His training told him that both Valkyrie and human patrols would be searching the area. The destroyed facility would have attracted attention, and someone would come to investigate. He led the hatchlings deeper into the forest, moving carefully, teaching them to step quietly and avoid breaking branches. They learned quickly, their natural agility making them surprisingly good at moving silently. Guardian took on the role of helping the smaller ones, gently guiding them and keeping them close. After 2 hours of hiking, Marcus found what he was looking for. A cluster of massive trees had fallen years ago, their trunks forming a natural shelter. Thick vegetation had grown over them, creating a hidden space underneath. It wasn't perfect, but it would keep them out of sight from aerial surveillance. "This is home for now," Marcus told the hatchlings. They explored their new shelter with the curiosity of children in a new playground. The small brave one, who Marcus had started calling Scout in his head, stayed close to him, watching everything he did. When Marcus started organizing supplies, Scout tried to help, clumsily imitating his movements. "You're a smart little thing," Marcus said, letting Scout hand him items from his pack. "Too smart. That's going to complicate things." The truth was, every moment he spent with the hatchlings made his situation more complicated. They weren't just aliens anymore. They were individuals. Scout was curious and brave. Guardian was protective and responsible. There was Tiny, the smallest one, who was always hungry. Bright Eyes, who seemed fascinated by anything that glowed. Quiet, who rarely made sounds but watched everything with intense focus. They had personalities. They had feelings. They were people. Marcus made a small fire using his emergency kit, keeping it low and smokeless. The hatchlings gathered around it, fascinated by the flames. He showed them how to be careful, how fire could hurt. When Tiny reached too close, Marcus gently pulled the small claw back and made a warning sound. Tiny chirped sadly but stayed back, learning the lesson. "That's right," Marcus said. "Fire is useful but dangerous, just like a lot of things in life." He divided his remaining rations, giving most to the hatchlings. They needed to eat more frequently than humans, their young bodies burning energy rapidly. Marcus made a mental note that he would need to find food soon. His supplies would last maybe another day, As the sun climbed higher, the temperature rose. The hatchlings grew drowsy, huddling together in the shade. Marcus watched them sleep, their small bodies rising and falling with breath, and felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. What was his plan here? He couldn't keep them hidden forever. He couldn't take them back to human territory without being arrested for treason. He couldn't find Velkhari territory without risking both his life and theirs. He was trapped between two species at war, protecting children that both sides would see as problems to be eliminated. His thoughts were interrupted by sounds in the forest. Footsteps. Multiple people moving through the underbrush. Marcus immediately went to full alert, signaling the hatchlings to stay quiet. They woke instantly, their instincts telling them danger was near, and pressed back into the deepest part of the shelter. Through the vegetation, Marcus saw human soldiers, a patrol from his unit searching the area. He recognized Ramirez among them, her face grim and focused. They were looking for him, or for his body, or for evidence of what had happened at the facility. "Spread out," Ramirez ordered. "Look for any sign of Chen. He wouldn't have survived that explosion, but we need confirmation." Marcus's hand went to his rifle, then stopped. These were his comrades, people he had fought beside, bled beside. He couldn't shoot them, but he also couldn't let them find the hatchlings. Scout pressed against his leg, trembling slightly. Marcus put a hand on the small creature's head in a comforting gesture, his mind racing through options. The patrol was moving systematically through the forest. They would find the shelter in minutes. He needed a distraction. Marcus carefully moved to the edge of the shelter, leaving his rifle behind. He grabbed a rock and threw it far to the right, where it crashed through vegetation. The soldiers immediately turned toward the sound, weapons ready. "Movement, eastern sector," one of them called. "Investigate," Ramirez ordered. "Probably just wildlife, but check it out." Half the patrol moved east. That left 3 soldiers near the shelter, including Ramirez. Still too many. Marcus needed them all to move away. He prepared to throw another rock when something unexpected happened. Quiet, the usually silent hatchling made a sound. It was a perfect imitation of a Velkhari warrior's battle cry, coming from the opposite direction. The sound was so authentic that even Marcus flinched. The soldiers reacted instantly, spinning toward the sound, weapons raised. "Velkhari in the area," Ramirez shouted into her comm. "We have contact. Fall back and regroup." The patrol withdrew quickly, moving away from the shelter to establish a defensive position. Marcus waited until they were gone, then turned to Quiet in amazement. "Did you just save us?" he whispered. Quiet tilted its head, making a soft chirp that might have been modest acknowledgement. The other hatchlings looked at Quiet with what Marcus could only interpret as respect. "You can mimic sounds," Marcus realized. "That's incredible. That's a survival trait. You're not just smart, you're adaptive." He thought about what that meant. The Velkhari weren't just warriors. They were a complex species with complex abilities. The humans had only seen their soldiers, their weapons, their aggression. But there was more to them. Culture, society, children who could learn and adapt and care for each other. Sarah would have been fascinated. She would have spent hours studying them, learning their communication patterns, understanding their development. Marcus felt a pang of grief, but also something new. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of it. "Okay, team," he said to the hatchlings, using the word deliberately. "We need to move. That patrol will be back with reinforcements, and we need to be long gone." The hatchlings formed up quickly, following his lead as they moved deeper into the forest. Marcus set a challenging pace, but they kept up remarkably well, their natural agility allowing them to navigate the terrain better than he could. They traveled for hours, always heading away from human settlements, deeper into the unexplored regions of the moon. Marcus had no idea what they would find there. Velkhari settlements. More danger? A place they could hide. As evening approached, Scout suddenly stopped and chirped urgently. The other hatchlings gathered around, all of them looking in the same direction. Their senses were picking up something Marcus couldn't detect. "What is it?" he asked, raising his rifle. Guardian moved to the front, sniffing the air. Then it made a series of complex sounds, different from its usual chirps and whistles. The other hatchlings responded with similar sounds, like they were having a conversation. "Are you talking to each other?" Marcus asked, fascinated despite the situation. Scout tugged on his hand, pulling him forward. The hatchlings moved with new purpose, following some scent or signal Marcus couldn't perceive. He followed them, trusting their instincts, his rifle ready for whatever they were leading him toward. They emerged into a clearing, and Marcus stopped in shock. Before them stood 3 adult Velkhari. But they weren't warriors. They carried no weapons, wore no armor. Their bodies were smaller, more delicate, their movements careful and non-threatening. When they saw the hatchlings, they made sounds of relief and concern, rushing forward. The hatchlings ran to them, chirping and clicking urgently. The adults examined them carefully, checking for injuries, their movements gentle and protective. Marcus realized what he was seeing. These were parents, caregivers. They had been searching for the hatchlings, terrified for their safety. One of the adults turned to Marcus, and he raised his rifle instinctively. But the Velkhari didn't attack. Instead, it made a sound that was almost a question, gesturing to the hatchlings and then to Marcus. Scout chirped and moved between Marcus and the adult, making complicated sounds and gestures. The adult listened, its multifaceted eyes studying Marcus with what he could only interpret as surprise. Guardian joined in, adding its own sounds. The adults listened, occasionally making soft responses. It was clear they were communicating, and Marcus was the subject. Finally, the first adult approached Marcus slowly, its movements deliberately non-threatening. It stopped a few feet away and made a gesture, touching its chest and then extending its hand toward him. Marcus understood. It was trying to communicate, trying to say something important. The Velkhari touched its chest again, then pointed to the hatchlings, then to Marcus. Then it placed its hand over where its heart would be and made a sound that was unmistakably grateful. "You're thanking me," Marcus whispered. "You're thanking me for keeping them safe." Marcus stood frozen, his rifle still raised but his finger off the trigger. The 3 adult Velkhari waited patiently, making no threatening moves. The hatchlings clustered around them, clearly comfortable with these adults, clearly seeing them as protectors. Everything Marcus had believed about the Velkhari for the past 3 years crashed into this single moment. The monsters who destroyed Europa Station, the merciless warriors who killed his family, they had families too. They had children. They had parents who loved those children. "I don't understand," Marcus said aloud, though he knew they couldn't comprehend his words. "You attacked us. You killed thousands of humans, women, children, my son." The adult Velkhari tilted its head, sensing his distress even if it couldn't understand the words. It made a soft sound and gestured for Marcus to follow. When he hesitated, Scout came over and tugged on his hand, chirping encouragingly. "You want me to go with you?" Marcus asked. That's either very trusting or very stupid. But what choice did he have? He could run, but where would he go? Back to the humans who would arrest him? Deeper into the forest alone? At least with the Velkhari, he might get answers. He might finally understand why Europa Station had died. He lowered his rifle and nodded. The adult Velkhari made a pleased sound and began walking. The hatchlings followed, with Scout staying close to Marcus, occasionally looking back to make sure he was still coming. They walked for nearly an hour, moving through parts of the forest Marcus had never seen. The vegetation grew thicker here, the trees more massive. Strange animals moved through the canopy, making sounds Marcus had never heard. The red sun filtered through the leaves, painting everything in shades of crimson and shadow. Finally, they arrived at a settlement. It wasn't what Marcus expected. There were no military installations, no weapon arrays, no signs of war preparation. Instead, he saw structures that looked organic, grown rather than built, integrated seamlessly with the forest. Velkhari moved between the structures, going about what looked like daily life. Some carried baskets of strange fruits. Others tended to gardens of alien plants. He saw more hatchlings playing in open spaces, supervised by adults. It looked peaceful, normal, like any small town anywhere in the galaxy. The adult leading Marcus gestured for him to wait, then entered one of the larger structures. The hatchlings gathered around Marcus protectively, as if sensing his unease. Other Velkhari in the settlement noticed him and stopped, staring at the human in their midst. Some made alarm sounds. Others simply watched with cautious curiosity. Scout pressed against Marcus's leg, making reassuring chirps. Guardian positioned itself between Marcus and the other Velkhari, its posture protective. "It's okay," Marcus told them quietly. "I know you're trying to help." The adult returned with another Velkhari, one that wore some kind of decorative garment that suggested status or authority. This new Velkhari was older, its chitinous armor darker and more weathered. It approached Marcus slowly, studying him with intelligent eyes. Then it did something that shocked Marcus to his core. It spoke. "Human soldier," the Velkari said in heavily accented but understandable English. "You save children." Marcus's jaw dropped. "You speak English?" "Some of us learn," the elder Velkari replied. "For understanding. For hoping peace." Its grammar was broken, but the meaning was clear. "You are Marcus Chen. We know this name." "How?" Marcus demanded, his hand moving toward his rifle. The elder raised its hands peacefully. "Your people speak of you. Radio signals, we hear. You are called hero for killing Velkari. You are called traitor for saving children." It gestured to the hatchlings. "Which is truth?" Marcus had no answer. Both were true. Neither was true. He wasn't sure anymore. "Why did you attack Europa Station?" Marcus asked. The question that had haunted him for 3 years finally finding voice. "Why did you kill all those people?" They were scientists, families, children. They weren't soldiers. The elder's expression, alien as it was, somehow conveyed deep sadness. Europa Station was a mistake. Terrible mistake. Young warriors not knowing truth, thinking human base was weapon facility. They attack without permission, without understanding. A mistake. Marcus felt rage building. 2,000 people died because of a mistake? Yes, the elder said simply. And when our leaders learn truth, they execute warriors who attack. They try to stop war. But your people are angry. They want revenge. They kill our colonies too. They destroy settlements like this one. Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. "What are you saying? That humans started the war?" "No," the elder corrected. "We started with mistake. Your people continue with revenge. Both sides now trapped in killing. Both sides losing children." It gestured to the settlement around them. "This place?" "Human soldiers destroy place like this 3 months ago. Kill many families. That is why these children have no parents. That is why they were in breeding facility, hiding." The pieces clicked into place in Marcus's mind. The hatchlings weren't being bred for war. They were orphans being protected in a hidden facility because human forces had destroyed their homes. Just like human children were orphaned when Velkari attacked colonies. "This is insane," Marcus whispered. "We're killing each other's children because we're angry about killed children. It's a cycle that never ends." "Yes," the elder agreed. "But you break cycle. You see children, not enemies. You choose to save, not kill. That is hope." Scout chirped and held up its small claw to Marcus. He took it automatically, the gesture now familiar and comforting. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "I can't go back to my people. They'll execute me as a traitor, but I can't stay here either. Your people have no reason to trust me." The elder was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then it made a gesture and several other Velkari approached. They carried something between them. A piece of equipment Marcus recognized with shock. It was human technology, a communication device but modified with Velkari components. "For 2 years, some of us try to make peace," the elder explained. "We have friends. Human friends. Scientists who want to stop war. They speak with us in secret. They help us. We help them. But no one listens to them. No one listens to us. Governments want war. You have human allies?" Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Yes, they hide like we hide. They want peace but are called traitors like you." The elder activated the communication device. "We want to ask you something. You are soldier. You are hero to your people. But you choose children over hate. Maybe you are voice that can be heard." A screen flickered to life and Marcus found himself looking at a human woman. She was middle-aged with tired eyes and gray hair, wearing a lab coat. She looked as shocked to see him as he was to see her. "Marcus Chen?" she said. "The Marcus Chen?" "Who are you?" Marcus asked. "Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne," she replied. "I'm a xenobiologist working with the Peace Faction. We've been trying to establish dialogue between humans and Velkari for months, but no one will listen. Then we heard about what you did saving those children. Everyone's talking about it. Both sides. Both sides think I'm a traitor," Marcus said bitterly. "Maybe," Dr. Hawthorne agreed. "Or maybe you're exactly what both sides need. A soldier who chose peace. Someone who both species can understand. Marcus, you can help us stop this war." Marcus looked down at Scout, who was watching the screen with curiosity. He thought about Guardian and Tiny and Quiet and all the other hatchlings. He thought about Tommy and Sarah. He thought about all the children on both sides who had died, who would continue to die if this war continued. How? he asked. I'm just one soldier with no authority and a death sentence on my head from both militaries. You have something more powerful than authority, Dr. Hawthorne said. You have a story. You have proof that Velkari and humans can coexist, that we're not so different. Those children trust you. The Velkari here trust you. That's worth more than any weapon. The elder Velkari spoke up. We ask you to meet with Peace Group, humans and Velkari together. Tell your story. Let others see what you see. Maybe then governments will listen. And if they don't, Marcus asked. Then at least we tried, the elder replied. Better to try for peace than to wait for war to kill everyone we love. Scout tugged on Marcus's hand, chirping hopefully. The small creature didn't understand the conversation, but it seemed to sense this was important. It looked up at Marcus with those strange, beautiful eyes, and Marcus saw reflected in them all the trust and hope that children everywhere place in adults to keep them safe. Okay, Marcus said finally. I'll do it. I'll tell my story. I'll try to help stop this war. But I have one condition. What is that? Dr. Hawthorne asked. Marcus looked at the hatchlings gathered around him. These children stay safe. No matter what happens to me, no matter what anyone says, these children are protected. They don't become prisoners or propaganda or casualties. They get to grow up in peace, the elder made a sound of approval. This we promise. They are precious to us. We protect them as our own. Then we have a deal, Marcus said. When do we start? The peace summit was arranged in secret, on a neutral moon far from both human and Velkari military zones. It took 3 weeks to organize. 3 weeks during which Marcus lived among the Velkari, learning their ways, teaching them about humans, and watching the hatchlings grow. Scout had barely left his side during that time, following him everywhere with devoted curiosity. The small Velkari had learned to understand simple English words and had taught Marcus several Velkari terms in return. They had developed their own way of communicating, a mixture of words, gestures, and sounds that bridged the gap between their species. Guardian had taken on more responsibility, helping teach the younger hatchlings the skills they would need to survive. Marcus watched the young Velkari organize the others into groups for learning and play, showing natural leadership abilities that reminded him of the best soldiers he had served with. Tiny had finally stopped being quite so tiny, growing rapidly on a diet of local vegetation and the protein supplements the Velkari synthesized. The small creature had discovered it loved music, making pleased sounds whenever Marcus hummed songs he remembered from Earth. Quiet continued to surprise everyone with its mimicry abilities. It could now imitate not just Velkari warrior cries, but human speech, animal sounds, and even mechanical noises. The Velkari explained this was a rare gift, one that appeared in only a few hatchlings each generation. On the morning of the summit, Marcus prepared carefully. He wore his military uniform, not because he felt he deserved it anymore, but because Dr. Hawthorne had insisted it would help his credibility. The sight of a decorated, human soldier vouching for Velkari children would carry weight with the fence-sitters who might be persuaded toward peace, Scout chirped. Sadly, when Marcus explained he had to leave for a while, the hatchling clung to his leg, reluctant to let go. I'll come back, Marcus promised, kneeling down to Scout's level. I swear I'll come back. I'm not abandoning you, but I need to do this to keep you safe. Scout made a questioning sound, tilting its head. Peace, Marcus said in Velkari, one of the words he had learned. I go make peace. So you can be safe. So all children can be safe. Scout seemed to understand. It reached up and gently touched Marcus's face, then made a sound Marcus had learned meant affection or approval. The other hatchlings gathered around, adding their own chirps and whistles of encouragement. Take care of each other, Marcus told them. Guardian, you're in charge. Keep the little ones safe. Guardian clicked in acknowledgement, standing straighter with pride at the responsibility. The transport to the summit location was tense. Marcus traveled with the elder Velkari, whose name he had learned was Historian, and 2 other Velkari representatives. They were joined by Dr. Hawthorne and 2 other human scientists, who had been secretly working for peace. The human delegation includes military, observers, and 3 senators who are sympathetic to ending the war, Dr. Hawthorne explained during the journey. The Velkari have sent their equivalent of diplomats. Neither side is officially sanctioning this meeting. If it fails, everyone here will be disavowed. No pressure, Marcus muttered. The pressure, Historian said in its careful English, is already on all children. Human children. Velkari children. They pay for our mistakes. We must do better for them. The summit location was a small research station that had been abandoned before the war started. Now it had been hastily refurbished, with separate areas for each delegation and a central meeting hall where the negotiations would take place. Marcus felt his stomach twist when he saw the human delegation arrive. Several of them were officers he recognized, including General Martinez, who had commanded the alien extermination force. These were people who had fought the Velkari for years, who had lost friends and soldiers to them, who had been taught that the only good alien was a dead alien. The same lesson Marcus had believed, until Scout and the other hatchlings had changed everything. The first day of the summit was brutal. Both sides were suspicious, angry, defensive. The human delegates demanded reparations for Europa Station. The Velkari delegates demanded justice for the colony worlds humans had destroyed. Every attempt at dialogue dissolved into accusations and counter-accusations. Marcus sat through it all, watching both sides refuse to see past their own pain and anger. He saw himself in them, saw the man he had been 3 years ago, consumed by hate and desire for revenge. On the second day, Dr. Hawthorne finally called on Marcus to speak. He stood slowly, feeling every eye in the room fix on him. Human eyes full of judgment and betrayal, Velkari eyes full of cautious hope. He took a deep breath and began. My name is Marcus Chen. 3 years ago I was a husband and father. My wife Sarah was a xenobiologist on Europa Station. My son Tommy was 7 years old. When the Velkari attacked Europa Station, I lost everything I loved. 2,000 people died that day. My family was among them. He saw several human delegates nod, their expressions saying they understood his pain. I joined the alien extermination force because I wanted revenge. I wanted every Velkari dead. I killed dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. I was good at it. I was decorated for it. I was a hero for killing aliens. The Velkari delegates shifted uncomfortably, but Historian gestured for them to stay quiet. 3 weeks ago, my unit was sent to destroy a Velkari breeding facility. We planted charges. We were going to blow the whole place up. Mission accomplished. Enemy assets eliminated, another victory in the war. But then I found the children. Marcus pulled out his datapad and displayed images he had taken of the hatchlings. Scout's curious face. Guardian protecting the smaller ones. Tiny sleeping peacefully. Quiet watching everything with intelligent eyes. These are Velkari hatchlings. Orphans from a colony human forces destroyed. They were being hidden in that facility, protected from us. When I found them, they were terrified. They were crying. They were just children, scared and alone because we had killed their families. He saw several human delegates look away, uncomfortable. I was supposed to leave them there to die. That was my order. That was my mission. But when I looked at them, all I could see was my son. I saw children who needed help. So I saved them instead. I disarmed the charges. I protected them. I brought them to safety. You committed treason, General Martinez said coldly. You betrayed your species for the enemy, did I? Marcus challenged. Or did I remember what we're supposed to be fighting for? We say we're fighting to protect humanity, to keep our families safe. But how does killing children do that? How does it make us safer to murder innocents? That's what monsters do. That's what we've become. He turned to display another image, this one of himself with Scout. The small Velkari was looking up at him with obvious trust and affection. This is Scout. That's what I call them because they're curious and brave. Scout was terrified when I found them, but they still tried to protect the other hatchlings from me. This child showed more courage in that moment than I showed in 3 years of war. And you know what Scout taught me? That Velkari can love. They can care. They can trust. They're not monsters. They're people. People who killed your family, one of the senators pointed out. Yes, Marcus agreed, feeling the old pain. People who made a terrible mistake. Just like we made terrible mistakes. I've learned that the attack on Europa Station wasn't authorized by Velkari leadership. It was young warriors who thought it was a military target. They were executed for their crime by their own people. But we didn't care about that. We wanted blood for blood. He looked at each human delegate in turn. I've spent the last 3 weeks living among the Velkari. I've seen their children play. I've watched their families care for each other. I've listened to them mourn their dead just like we mourn ours. And I've realized something that should have been obvious from the start. We're the same. We're both intelligent species who love our children and want them to be safe. We're both capable of terrible violence when we're scared or angry. We're both trapped in a war that neither side can win without destroying the other completely. Marcus activated another image, this one showing a young Velkari playing with human toys Marcus had given them, while a human child's drawing of alien ships hung on the wall behind them. This is what the future could look like. Children from both our species, learning from each other, playing together, growing up without hate. Or we can continue this war until there are no children left on either side to save. Those are our choices. Those are the only choices that matter. The room was silent. Marcus could see emotions warring on faces throughout the chamber. Anger, doubt, hope, fear. General Martinez stood, his face hard. You're asking us to trust them. To believe they won't attack us again the moment we lower our guard. No, Marcus corrected. I'm asking us to build peace together. Trust has to be earned on both sides, but it starts with choosing not to kill children. It starts with recognizing that the beings on the other side of this war are people, not monsters. It starts with being brave enough to try for something better. Historian stood as well, speaking slowly but clearly. Human Marcus speaks truth. We cannot undo past. We cannot bring back dead, but we can choose to stop making more dead. We can choose to protect all children. Velkari and human. We can choose peace. One of the Velkari delegates made a sound of protest, but Historian silenced them with a... Historian said in its careful English, is already on all children. Human children, Velkari children. They pay for our mistakes. We must do better for them. The summit location was a small research station that had been abandoned before the war started. Now it had been hastily refurbished, with separate areas for each delegation and a central meeting hall where the negotiations would take place. Marcus felt his stomach twist when he saw the human delegation arrive. Several of them were officers he recognized, including General Martinez, who had commanded the alien extermination force. These were people who had fought the Velkari for years, who had lost friends and soldiers to them, who had been taught that the only good alien was a dead alien, the same lesson Marcus had believed, until Scout and the other hatchlings had changed everything. The first day of the summit was brutal. Both sides were suspicious, angry, defensive. The human delegates demanded reparations for Europa Station. The Velkari delegates demanded justice for the colony worlds humans had destroyed. Every attempt at dialogue dissolved into accusations and counter-accusations. Marcus sat through it all, watching both sides refuse to see past their own pain and anger. He saw himself in them, saw the man he had been 3 years ago, consumed by hate and desire for revenge. On the second day, Dr. Hawthorne finally called on Marcus to speak. He stood slowly, feeling every eye in the room fix on him. Human eyes full of judgment and betrayal, Velkari eyes full of cautious hope. He took a deep breath and began. My name is Marcus Chen. 3 years ago, I was a husband and father. My wife, Sarah, was a xenobiologist on Europa Station. My son, Tommy, was 7 years old. When the Velkari attacked Europa Station, I lost everything I loved. 2,000 people died that day. My family was among them. He saw several human delegates nod, their expressions saying they understood his pain. I joined the alien extermination force because I wanted revenge. I wanted every Velkari dead. I killed dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. I was good at it. I was decorated for it. I was a hero for killing aliens. The Velkari delegates shifted uncomfortably, but Historian gestured for them to stay quiet. 3 weeks ago, my unit was sent to destroy a Velkari breeding facility. We planted charges. We were going to blow the whole place up. Mission accomplished. Enemy assets eliminated. Another victory in the war. But then I found the children. Marcus pulled out his datapad and displayed images he had taken of the hatchlings.
Scout's curious face.
Guardian protecting the smaller ones. Tiny sleeping peacefully. Quiet watching everything with intelligent eyes. These are Velkari hatchlings. Orphans from a colony human forces destroyed. They were being hidden in that facility, protected from us. When I found them, they were terrified. They were crying. They were just children, scared and alone because we had killed their families. He saw several human delegates look away, uncomfortable. I was supposed to leave them there to die. That was my order. That was my mission. But when I looked at them, all I could see was my son. I saw children who needed help, so I saved them instead. I disarmed the charges. I protected them. I brought them to safety. You committed treason. General Martinez said coldly. You betrayed your species for the enemy. Did I? Marcus challenged. Or did I remember what we're supposed to be fighting for? We say we're fighting to protect humanity, to keep our families safe. But how does killing children do that? How does it make us safer to murder innocents? That's what monsters do. That's what we've become. He turned to display another image, this one of himself with Scout. The small Velkari was looking up at him with obvious trust and affection. This is Scout. That's what I call them because they're curious and brave. Scout was terrified when I found them. But they still tried to protect the other hatchlings from me. This child showed more courage in that moment than I showed in 3 years of war. And you know what Scout taught me? That Velkari can love. They can care. They can trust. They're not monsters. They're people. People who killed your family, one of the senators pointed out. Yes, Marcus agreed, feeling the old pain. People who made a terrible mistake. Just like we made terrible mistakes. I've learned that the attack on Europa Station wasn't authorized by Velkari leadership. It was young warriors who thought it was a military target. They were executed for their crime by their own people. But we didn't care about that. We wanted blood for blood. He looked at each human delegate in turn. I've spent the last 3 weeks living among the Velkari. I've seen their children play. I've watched their families care for each other. I've listened to them mourn their dead just like we mourn ours. And I've realized something that should have been obvious from the start. We're the same. We're both intelligent species who love our children and want them to be safe. We're both capable of terrible violence when we're scared or angry. We're both trapped in a war that neither side can win without destroying the other completely. Marcus activated another image, this one showing a young Velkari playing with human toys Marcus had given them, while a human child's drawing of alien ships hung on the wall behind them. This is what the future could look like. Children from both our species, learning from each other, playing together, growing up without hate. Or we can continue this war until there are no children left on either side to save. Those are our choices. Those are the only choices that matter. The room was silent. Marcus could see emotions warring on faces throughout the chamber. Anger, doubt, hope, fear. General Martinez stood, his face hard. You're asking us to trust them, to believe they won't attack us again the moment we lower our guard. No, Marcus corrected. I'm asking us to build peace together. Trust has to be earned on both sides. But it starts with choosing not to kill children. It starts with recognizing that the beings on the other side of this war are people, not monsters. It starts with being brave enough to try for something better. Historian stood as well, speaking slowly but clearly. Human Marcus speaks truth. We cannot undo past. We cannot bring back dead, but we can choose to stop making more dead. We can choose to protect all children. Velkari and human, we can choose peace. One of the Velkari delegates made a sound of protest, but Historian silenced them with a gesture. I am old, Historian continued. I have seen many wars. Always it is children who pay price. Always it is children who die for decisions of adults. I am tired of seeing children die. I want to see them live. I want to see them learn about each other, not kill each other. A human senator stood, a woman Marcus didn't recognize. I lost my daughter in the war. She was a Marine, killed in a Velkari ambush. For a long time I wanted nothing but revenge. But Sergeant Chen is right. We've become the very thing we're fighting against. We've become killers of innocence. I cannot in good conscience continue to support a war where we deliberately target civilian populations and children. Another human delegate stood. Then another. And slowly, grudgingly, the conversation began to shift. Not toward immediate peace, but toward the possibility of peace. Toward ceasefire discussions. Toward prisoner exchanges and humanitarian aid. Toward the long, difficult work of building trust between species that had been trying to exterminate each other. It wasn't victory. It wasn't even guaranteed success. But it was a beginning. And that was more than either side had dared hope for in years. As the session ended for the day, Dr. Hawthorne approached Marcus. You did well. You gave them something they needed to see. Proof that coexistence is possible. Marcus thought about Scout waiting for him back at the Velkari settlement. About Guardian and Tiny and Quiet and all the others. I didn't do it for the cause, he admitted. I did it for them. For the children who are depending on us to be better than we've been. That, Dr. Hawthorne said with a small smile, is exactly the right reason. 6 months after the summit, Marcus stood at the window of what had become his home, watching the sunrise paint the alien forest in shades of gold and crimson. Behind him, he heard the familiar sounds of hatchlings waking up, their chirps and whistles blending with childish laughter as human children joined them. The settlement had changed dramatically. What had once been a hidden Velkhari refuge was now something unprecedented in the galaxy. A mixed community where humans and Velkhari lived together, learning from each other, building trust one day at a time. It hadn't been easy. The ceasefire agreement reached at the summit was fragile, tested constantly by hardliners on both sides who wanted the war to continue. There were still attacks, still casualties, still people who believed peace was impossible. But slowly, painfully, the violence was decreasing. More people were willing to try, willing to hope. Marcus had become an unlikely symbol for the peace movement. His face appeared on broadcasts across human space and Velkhari territory, always with the same message. Children deserved better than war. Both sides used his story, though neither fully trusted him. He was too Velkhari sympathetic for the humans, too human-allied for the Velkhari hardliners. He didn't care. Let them call him traitor or idealist or fool. He had 23 Velkhari hatchlings and a dozen human orphans who called him protector. And that was the only approval he needed. Scout climbed up beside him, now almost half Marcus's height after 6 months of growth. The young Velkhari had become his constant companion, translating between species, helping mediate conflicts, and generally making sure Marcus didn't work himself to exhaustion. "Big day," Scout said in careful English. The hatchlings had learned the language quickly, their young minds absorbing it faster than Marcus had learned Velkhari. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "You nervous?" Scout made a sound that meant both yes and no. Excited nervous. Good nervous. Today was the opening ceremony for the first official mixed school, where human and Velkhari children would learn together. It was a small project, only 40 students total, but it represented something enormous. It proved that the two species could not only coexist but flourish together. Guardian entered the room, now wearing the translator device that allowed clearer communication. The young Velkhari had grown into the leadership role, becoming the unofficial representative for the hatchlings in community decisions. "All children are ready," Guardian reported. Tiny is very excited. Quiet is nervous. The human children are asking many questions, Marcus smiled. Let them ask. Curiosity is good. It's how we learn about each other. The settlement had grown to house 50 Velkhari and 30 humans, mostly scientists and peace activists who believed in the project. Dr. Hawthorne had relocated here permanently, establishing a research center where both species could study together. Historian served as the Velkhari elder, providing wisdom and guidance. There were still challenges. Cultural misunderstandings happened daily. Some humans found Velkhari customs strange or disturbing. Some Velkhari struggled to understand human emotional expressions. But they worked through it, one problem at a time, building a foundation of understanding. Marcus walked through the settlement toward the new school building, Scout at his side and Guardian following with the other hatchlings. Human children ran alongside them, chattering excitedly. The children had adapted to mixed living far faster than the adults, seeing friends where their parents had once seen enemies. The school was a beautiful structure, designed collaboratively by human architects and Velkhari builders. It combined the organic flowing style of Velkhari construction with human geometric precision, creating something that belonged to both cultures and neither. A crowd had gathered for the ceremony. Humans and Velkhari stood together, some comfortable with the mixing, others still wary but trying. News crews from both species recorded everything, broadcasting to millions watching across the galaxy. Marcus took his place at the speaker's platform alongside Dr. Hawthorne and Historian. His hands trembled slightly as he looked out at the crowd, at the children who would be the first generation to grow up without automatically hating the other species. 3 years ago, Marcus began, his voice amplified to reach the entire gathering. I believed the only good alien was a dead alien. I had lost my family to violence, and violence was all I could understand. I wanted revenge. I wanted every Velkhari to pay for what happened to the people I loved. He paused, seeing Scout in the front row, watching him with those intelligent, multifaceted eyes. But then I met children, Velkhari children who were scared and alone, who had lost their families just like I had lost mine. and I realized that hate was a choice. Revenge was a choice, but so was compassion, so was understanding, so was peace. Marcus gestured to the school behind him. This building represents a different choice. It represents the decision to teach our children about each other, instead of teaching them to fear and hate. It represents the belief that intelligence and curiosity and compassion are universal, regardless of what species you were born into. It represents hope. A human woman in the crowd shouted, "What about justice for the dead? Do we just forget what they did to us?" Marcus had expected this. There were always people who couldn't move past the pain, and he understood them because he had been them. "We don't forget," he said firmly. "We never forget. The dead deserve to be remembered, honored, mourned, but they also deserve for their deaths to mean something. If we continue killing each other's children to avenge our children, their deaths mean nothing. They just become fuel for more violence, more loss, more death. But if we learn from our mistakes, if we choose to build peace so that no more families are destroyed, then maybe, just maybe, their sacrifice wasn't meaningless." He saw the woman wipe tears from her eyes, saw others in the crowd nodding slowly. Historian stepped forward, speaking in Velkari with a translation broadcast for the humans. "Our people have saying," the elder began, "the deepest roots grow from broken ground. War breaks ground, makes terrible pain, makes deep scars. But from broken ground, new things can grow, stronger things, better things. This school is new growth. These children are new growth. They will have roots in both our peoples. They will be bridge between our worlds." Dr. Hawthorne spoke next, her voice full of emotion. "I've spent my life studying alien species, trying to understand what makes us different. But this project has taught me to look for what makes us the same. Velkarian humans both love our children. Both want them to be safe, healthy, happy. Both hope for a future better than our past. That's what matters. That's what will save us both." The ceremony continued with speeches from other community leaders, both human and Velkari. Then came the moment Marcus had been waiting for. Scout stepped forward, having volunteered to speak on behalf of the children. The young Velkari stood before the crowd, small but brave, speaking clearly in both English and Velkari. "I am Scout. I am Velkari. My first memory is human Marcus saving my life. He is not my species, but he is my family. He taught me that family is choice, not birth. That love crosses all boundaries. That courage means choosing peace even when hate is easier." Scout turned to look at the human children standing with the hatchlings. "These are my friends. Human friends. Velkari friends. They do not care that I have 4 arms and they have 2. They do not care that my eyes are different, my skin is different, my words are different. They care that we play together, learn together, grow together. Children understand what adults forget. We are all just children. We all just want to be happy and safe and loved." The crowd was silent. Many were crying, human and Velkari alike. Scout's simple words had cut through all the complexity, all the politics, all the history, to the fundamental truth at the heart of everything. "So we say to all adults, human and Velkari," Scout continued, "please choose peace. Please choose future. Please let us grow up together, not die apart. Please be brave enough to try." Scout stepped back and the crowd erupted in applause and clicking and sounds of approval from both species. Marcus felt tears running down his face as he watched the young Velkari who had changed his lifeboat to the audience. After the ceremony, as children from both species entered the school together for the first time, Marcus found himself approached by General Martinez. The human military leader looked older than Marcus remembered, worn down by years of war and difficult choices. "Sergeant Chen," Martinez said formally, "I owe you an apology. When you first saved those hatchlings, I called you a traitor. I wanted you court-martialed and executed. I was wrong." Marcus was surprised. "Sir, I've spent the last 6 months watching what you've built here," Martinez continued, "watching how the children interact, reading reports from the scientists about Velkari culture and communication, learning things we should have learned before we started killing them. You were right, and I was too blinded by anger to see it." "We were all blinded," Marcus said quietly. "The war made us all into people we weren't supposed to be." "Maybe," Martinez agreed. "But you found your way back to being human. The real kind of human. The kind that protects children and builds peace. That takes more courage than any battle." The general extended his hand. Marcus shook it, feeling something heavy lift from his shoulders. Acceptance, maybe. Or forgiveness. Or just the acknowledgement that they were all situaes.